Okay, hello again then, Hollows. Welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm going to be doing a brief, unscripted, more sort of casual review of the Dark Souls Shadow of the Eclipse mod. Now, this is a recent mod that was released on Nexus mods very recently, about a month ago, if I remember rightly. But it was released more informally onto, I think it was not Nexus mods, but it was maybe their websites, I don't know, or Patreon or something. It was released back in last November or October. I didn't realise that when I started playing it, actually. But I'm going to give my general opinions on the mod in this video. Now, I did, just so you all know, I did a casual playthrough, like a standard playthrough of Dark Souls, of the mod. Now, yes, the mod focuses on expanding the Covenants to provide better single-player experiences for the Covenants, and I would have done those. I would have done some of the Covenant quest lines if they became obvious or notable in some kind of way. I joined some Covenants throughout my playthrough, and I sort of just progressed through the game and saw if anything's happened in the game as I was in those Covenants. I didn't really notice anything. The one that the game immediately throws at you is the Grave Lord Covenant, because it's quite obvious that you can jump down the well in Firelink Shrine to get to Grave Lord Nito and join that Covenant early. So I thought, okay, the mod's encouraging you to join that Covenant early, and then I assumed some things would happen in that Covenant. I did get a couple of things like tokens that I could give to Gravelord Nito, but they didn't really do much. The ones that I got, I didn't really get that many. And then obviously I was joining other Covenants during my playthrough, so therefore I wasn't necessarily being devoted to that one specific Covenant. So I didn't really notice any of the main Covenant events or story things that were put into the game with the mod. So I didn't really experience any of that. But I would say that if it was such a big, significant thing, it would perhaps have been better to make it a little bit more noticeable, the kind of things that were going to happen, or a little bit more in your face, that, you know, how to do certain things and progress certain quest lines. I understand that the mod's obviously going for the Dark Souls approach, which is you make it a little bit more obscure, a little bit unknown. That's fine, but maybe have it so that the mod comes with a file to at least tell you how to start each of the Covenant's quest lines, or the main route of progression for them. I did download the change logs, but it's not exactly very obvious in the change logs, is it? It's really obtuse, reading like thousands and thousands of words detailing statistic changes to things. So perhaps that would have been an option to make it a little bit more easily accessible for some people. However, my experience is through a casual playthrough of the mod. Now, for starters, I'm going to say the best area, in my personal opinion, in this, but the two best areas is, number one, Sen's Fortress is very good. I really like the changes they made to Sen's Fortress. The layout changes at the top were very good. In general, Sen's Fortress as a whole was improved well, with one exception, but I'll get to that later. I liked the environmental changes. Changing some of the actual geometry of the level was a massive thing to me, and it changed the route that you actually go through in that level. I personally think more areas should be like this. I think what they should have done is maybe change the route that you enter New Londo Ruins. Maybe make it so that actually going back up the top to Firelink Shrine is how you finish New Londo Ruins. Not finish New Londo Ruins, but maybe that's like a shortcut back, or something like that, and you start New Londo Ruins in a different place and you progress through the level through a different route. Things like this I would have liked to see a little bit more of. Sen's Fortress was a fantastic example of that, where they put ladders in different places, so you actually did your route through the rooftop of Sen's Fortress was fundamentally different than a regular playthrough of Dark Souls. I really enjoyed that. I thought it was fantastic. I know and I understand that not every single area in the game is necessarily going to be you can do that with, because obviously not every single area is as vertical as Sen's Fortress. That specific section where you can put ladders in to connect different areas. It was very well thought out. Not every area obviously is going to be like that, but Sen's Fortress was a good example of some of the things I really liked in the level. Another one was New Londo Ruins. New Londo Ruins was fantastic. They fundamentally changed the gimmick so that you had to go to these curse pillars, and they gave you the transient curse instead of using the actual transient curse. Being near one of those pillars would give you a transient curse for 10 seconds, it seemed like, and the effect lingered for about 10 seconds after you stepped away from it. So that was really good. I really liked that effect, and they even introduced it in a really good way. So first of all, when you first enter Londo Ruins, you see one of these pillars out in the open. Naturally, you go up to it because it's not normally in Dark Souls. So you go up to this pillar, and then it tells you, okay, that this is a transient curse pillar or something like that it's called. Obelisk, I think it was called, like a transient obelisk or something like this, or a cursed obelisk. And then that's a really good way of introducing the concepts to the player. That's something that many video game developers do, is first of all you introduce a gimmick to a player in a sort of safe environment where they can mess around with it and understand what it does at their own free time, with their own free will, without any potential threat. And that's exactly how this obelisk is introduced to the player. Then you move forward, and obviously you've got an obelisk then with 2 or 3 of the ghosts. So you've got a sort of balance going to that obelisk whilst fighting the ghosts. It's a very good way of changing up the structure of play, how you normally would play New Londo Ruins, even though a lot of the level does fundamentally follow the same progression as you normally would do when you go through the level. Having that extra thing to worry about, or that extra change to the gameplay, fundamentally changes how you approach the level. Then you get to the bonfire, when you get the key to the seal, drain the water of New Londo Ruins, and then there's a bonfire there halfway through the level. Then the level does something just bizarre to me. It introduces these abyss, like rocks or stones or slabs that block certain areas of the way. So essentially, after you reach the second bonfire and you drain the water in New Londo Ruins, the whole first section of New Londo Ruins is blocked off to you. I don't understand this. If there is some other thing that I missed, some way to remove them or something, I would love to know. Because to me, it just seemed like those were put there to deliberately make it harder to get to the Four Kings boss fight. Because that fundamentally removes the good shortcut in the level, which the developers did, where you could roll down and get to the lower section of New Londo Ruins earlier by rolling down and using the geometry, the vertical geometry, which always make for a fantastic shortcut to get to the Four Kings boss fight quicker. But then doing this then means that you have to, so they added in a bonfire, which is great. They added in a bonfire. The second bonfire is the one just after you drain the water in New Londo Ruins, but there's a first one as well, which is actually in New Londo Ruins, so you don't have to go down from Firelink Shrine every time you go to New Londo Ruins. So I thought, excellent, they've put a bonfire here to make the boss more convenient. So there's a bonfire right there, you roll down, use the geometry, the vertical geometry of Dark Souls, then get to the Four Kings boss fight really easily. I thought, fantastic, that's a brilliant change. But then introducing these abyssal rocks, or whatever they're called, or abyssal entities, that means that now that whole area is blocked off. So when you're at the first bonfire in New Londo Ruins, you go up to this abyssal entity, and then it teleports you immediately to the second bonfire, which is the bonfire you have to use to get to the Four Kings boss fight, which again makes it deliberately tedious. Now it's a long boss run again. You have to go past all the enemies, more enemies than you normally would have to get past on a regular playthrough of the game, fighting the Four Kings. Now the changes they made to the Four Kings fight I actually thought were very good. At first of all, I found them a little bit frustrating, but then I realised, okay, they've just got a few new moves, things are a little bit different, they've got a bit more health, the fight functionally changes a little bit, and I really like the Four Kings boss fight. I think they made some excellent changes, which fundamentally made the boss more difficult, yes, but more fun for a more veteran player like myself, as someone who's played the game dozens of times. The game, I'd say the mod as a whole is very much hit and miss like that. There are some really cool changes to certain areas, but then they're always undercut by something frustrating that the mod maker has added in or changed to an area to end up making it more frustrating than it ended up having to be. The biggest example of this is Demon Ruins. Demon Ruins is something that actually honestly baffles me. So the Demon Ruins have been improved because, first of all, the Primeval Demon is the new version of the Ceaseless Discharge. Much better name. I don't know what Miyazaki was thinking when he came up with Ceaseless Discharge. But that fight's good, not improved that much, but you can't cheese it anymore, and they've sort of changed a little bit, so it's a little more difficult. It's more like a regular boss fight, okay? It's just sort of like the old Iron King in Dark Souls 2, when that's more like the regular version of that fight. Then, after that, you realise that there's only one bonfire in the Demon Ruins. One bonfire. They've removed the second bonfire from Demon Ruins, which would normally be, if you roll down to that little area down below, you got the little rockworm things that come down. That bonfire there has been removed. Now, first of all, you think, okay, that's not that bad. That's quite close to the first bonfire anyway, but then you realise that they've added in more frustrating enemies, and the Demon Fire Sage is now way harder. Then suddenly it becomes an issue. Then suddenly it's like, okay, you've got the new cut enemy, the crag spiders, which have been made really frustrating. They have this fire attack they do, which immediately knocks you to the ground, and you've got to wait several seconds to get back up. Okay? First of all, you think, okay, if there's not that many of them, that's alright, but there's loads of them. And all the other enemies have been buffed up as well. The whole Shadow of the Eclipse mod, something I didn't say, is the Shadow of the Eclipse mod reduces your damage across the board. Your damage is like half of what you normally would be doing in general. It's like half. And all your stats they don't go as far. So your vitality, when you increase that, doesn't give you as much health. Your endurance doesn't give you as much stamina. And everything across the board is essentially nerfed. So at this point in the game, I personally felt like I was dealing way too little damage. The enemies are buffed. The crag spiders knock you to the floor like crazy, so I'm nerfed and all the enemies around me are buffed, and the bonfire has been taken out. The Demon Fire Sage, the new version of the Demon Fire Sage, is good if it's not in that tiny little arena with all the little shit on the floor everywhere that constantly getting you stuck all over the place. It's got some new attacks, literally completely new attacks. It's basically not the same as the Stray Demon and the Asylum Demon at that point. It's completely different, which is really cool. I really like that. But the problem is, a massive boss run with really annoying enemies in the way every single time means that I wasn't enjoying that fight. So in the end, I just modded myself in some extra few levels so I felt like I wasn't underpowered, and then fought him on my own terms. Then I enjoyed the fight, and then I could see the positives of the fight, even though it still was annoying fighting him in that really small room, which is a fundamentally annoying thing. I really would have much preferred it if they just took out the Stray Demon and just had the Demon Fire Sage there. You don't need that boss in that part of Demon Ruins, really. Just put a bonfire there, and then you got the Centipede Demon straight afterwards anyway. I think that would have been a much better thing for the mod maker to do. So you can fight the Demon of Fire Sage when you go back to the Asylum Demon as the Stray Demon, and then just cut out the Stray Demon altogether. I think that would have been the better version, because this mod essentially makes the Asylum Demon the Stray Demon anyway, because it's got some of the Stray Demon's moves, so might as well have done that. But hey, what are you going to do? Then I'm focusing on Demon Ruins and Lost Isolith because this mod specifically says that it's specifically trying to improve the weaker aspects of Dark Souls. So that's why the main changes to this game are in what are known as the game's weaker areas. So Demon Ruins, the new Londo Ruins a little bit, Tomb of the Giants, not so much, but Duke's Archives, those kind of areas. So the Bed of Chaos seems to cause a bit of an issue online. I am not sure if it was nerfed in the Shadow of the Eclipse mod, but I saw a lot of people on YouTube and things complaining about this mod's version of the Bed of Chaos being worse than the original Bed of Chaos. I did not think it was that bad. To me, it's a better version of the Bed of Chaos. Again, at this point, I had given myself a few extra levels so I wasn't feeling as frustrated and under-leveled, because this mod almost comes across like two things. The mod seems like, number one, it's trying to improve Dark Souls as a whole and make Dark Souls better, but then, number two, it seems to be trying to be a challenge mod, where it's making everything really hard. I feel like this mod doesn't manage to strike a balance between the two, because you can't. Either you're trying to fundamentally improve Dark Souls and improve some of the weaker aspects of the game, or you're trying to make a challenge mod. You can't do both, because having a game that's punishingly difficult is not going to be as fun as just regular Dark Souls to me. Because when you're making a game punishingly difficult, that's difficult for the sake of being difficult, you lose just enjoyable gaming experience, which is what regular Dark Souls is. So, the Bed of Chaos is... I can understand where people are coming at when they say that it is very hard. It attacks, deals a lot of damage, there's a load of things to look out for all the time, and it's pretty chaotic, but it is supposed to be the Bed of Chaos. I think that the problem is just how hard-hitting some of the attacks are based on what level your character would be and how much health your character would be at that point in the game in this mod, when you're doing reduced damage and you have less health than you normally would do in a regular playthrough. In my opinion, that's where the issues come in, because... So I understand people's flaws there. Based on my experience, though, obviously I had given myself a few extra levels. I can see that that is a better version of the Bed of Chaos if it had slightly toned down damage values. Maybe they already have toned down the damage values, to be fair, in the version that I played. Maybe it was, you know, I don't know, I didn't play the original. I didn't play it back when some people played it when I saw they were criticising it, because some people were criticising it about 8 months ago or 9 months ago or whatever. So, you know, when the mod maker did like early access, people who supported it on Patreon. So there's a chance that the mod has already been improved anyway. But, you know, if people still have an issue with Bed of Chaos now, then, you know, I think maybe with some tweaked damage numbers maybe. But again, I was playing it in a slightly different way anyway at this point. But the Duke's Archives then is the other thing that I take a big issue with. The Duke's Archives has always been my personal least favourite area in the original Dark Souls. And in my opinion, this mod makes it worse. It just fundamentally, everything about the Duke's Archives and Crystal Caves is just as bad, if not worse, than the original Duke's Archives. I would say worse, to be honest. Because in the Duke's Archives, okay, you go to the Duke's Archives, first of all, the bonfire there in the Duke's Archives doesn't work until you kill both of the two boars. So, okay, that's to encourage you not to run around the boars. Okay, but again, you got to bear in mind, we're dealing reduced damage here, and we have less health in this mod. So therefore, at this point in my playthrough, I hadn't upgraded my health or anything on my stats, so I was just dying straight away to these boars. And I'd just beat Ornstein and Smo, you know? That's supposed to be almost like the big... You know, you're powerful after that, you know? But yeah, the bonfire doesn't work until you've defeated those. Then, to get up to the actual Seath fight, where he curses you and sends you to the jail cell, you can't just get up there on the lift. You have to call the lift. Which means that, bear in mind, this encounter here, this Duke's Archives encounter, is ridiculous. There's more of the archers that are shooting you. There's more of the crystal soldiers here, because obviously the mod's a bit sadistic. So, you have to call the lift down every single time you want to get to the Seath fight, because it doesn't come down, it doesn't stay down once you pull the lift down. The lift comes down, so you have to call the lift down every time, wait for the lift to come down, then get in the lift, go up, and then there's a Chandler at the top you got to kill, and then you get into the Seath fight where he curses you and sends you to the jail. But no, there's a Crystal Knight here now. The Crystal Knight that usually you would fight on the way up to the Seath room when he sends you to the jail cell, he is now in the Seath boss room as well. So I was thinking, okay, clearly then I have to take down Seath as well as this guy, or maybe I have to take down this Crystalline Knight first, and then after that I'll be able to kill Seath. Normally in some way, or maybe Seath will disappear or something, and you find out it's an illusion or something like this. But no, you fight. So I would have just killed myself to the curse, right? If I'd realised, to be fair, I don't even know if you could kill yourself to the curse, and then I don't even know if it would have taken you to the jail cell. Maybe it still would have killed you anyway. But if you died to the Crystal Knight Soldier like I did a couple of times, because he's buffed up a bit and I'm weaker, you go back to the regular bonfire. So you don't go to the jail cell. You go back to the regular bonfire. They have to battle me up there again through all that shit. And the Crystal Knight Soldier is tough, like I said. So I was trying to fight him properly on a regular playing field. I fought him properly, beat him. You don't get any souls for it. You don't get anything for it. Now, bear in mind, When you normally go into the Seath boss room, you're wearing the rare ring of sacrifice to make sure that you don't get cursed and you don't lose your souls. I lost my rare ring of sacrifice because I was trying to kill the Crystal Knight. So I lost my rare ring of sacrifice because when I went into the boss room, I didn't know that I wasn't going to go to the jail cell, did I? So this is just fundamentally flawed. This is just, in my opinion, like objectively worse, because you're tricking the player into thinking you're going to get some reward for killing the Crystal Knight. You kill him, you don't get anything anyway. You didn't get any souls. Maybe you could have given you another rare ring of sacrifice when you kill him. So then that's like a little hint to the player. Okay, here's your rare ring of sacrifice. Put on the rare ring of sacrifice now before Seath uses his big curse breath and kills you. That would have been a little hint, which I probably would have picked up on, and then put the rare ring of sacrifice on before Seath instantly murders you. So, to me, this is just completely flawed. Then you get to the jail cell. This all plays out exactly the same. This is the same as regular Dark Souls. Then you get to the Crystal Caves. The Crystal Caves, I thought, okay, they're probably going to improve the Crystal Caves. They improve the Crystal Cave a little bit, a tiny bit, because there is a bonfire at the start of the Crystal Caves, right next to a Crystal Golem. Literally right next to it. So you spawn in at the bonfire, the Crystal Golem is right there, in front of your face. Then you get to the Seath fight. The Seath fight is exactly the same, except now his invincibility crystal doesn't die straight away. You have to whack it about 10 times because they gave it loads of health, which means that in that time, Seath is breathing his curse crystals at you. So it's just... why? Like, these are changes that frustrate you for no reason. Why are they done? Again, going back to Sen's Fortress, like I said earlier, there was an issue with Sen's Fortress. Sen's Fortress is fantastic. I love the things this mod did to Sen's Fortress, but then it puts a Baraniki Knight right in front of the fog gate to the Iron Golem. And it respawns. It doesn't die. It doesn't die permanently like the regular Baraniki Knights. It's in front of the fog gate, and it stays there. It respawns every time. So, and also this mod makes you not invincible when you go through fog gates. So it's like Dark Souls 2 fog gates. You take damage when you go through a fog gate, and it can stop you going through the fog gate. It's reduced damage, yes, and then you do get invincible after a certain period, but still. So the mod does that and then puts a Baraniki Knight right in front of the Iron Golem boss fight deliberately. Frustrating. Like Artorias, for example. Artorias, the mod puts a bonfire right outside Artorias for you, but then puts like a big massive one of the big stone knights and then 3 of the bush trees in front of the fog gate. Like, okay, that one's not as bad because at least the bonfire is right in front of there. But with the Iron Golem one, right, you got a big trek to get there. You still got to go up the lift, you know. And there are many other examples of the mod deliberately putting enemies right in front of a fog gate or doing things where you think that the run. And yeah, another example is Ornstein and Smoke. So the mod has put the bonfire now in essentially the Dark Souls 3 Anor Londo spot. So the mod moves the bonfire from the chamber of the not the chamber of the princess, sorry, the Dark Sun Moon Gwyndolin room, Dark Moon Tomb, I think it's called. He moves the bonfire from the Dark Moon Tomb and puts it in where it is in Dark Souls 3's Anor Londo, which is right before the stairs. Okay, that seems good. But then in the main hall of Anor Londo, they put one of those big, massive knights, the giant knights, right outside the fog gate for Ornstein and Smoke, just right outside the fog gate, which makes your run to the boss worse. So why is the mod doing things to make your run to the boss better and then deliberately doing things to make it worse? I just cannot understand the logic. Like, for example, again, moving the bonfire to be where it is in Dark Souls 3 for Anor Londo means that the run to Ornstein and Smoke is better, but then it also means that the run to Gwyndolin's worse, because Gwyndolin's now buffed. Gwyndolin does attacks way faster now, and they go through walls more, and they deal way more damage. So that means, again, your run to Ornstein and Smoke is better, but your run to the Gwyndolin fight's worse. Just like how the mod will put the bonfire more conveniently outside Artorias, but then remove a bonfire in Demon Ruins to make your run to the boss worse. I just cannot understand the logic of the mod. The final thing in this little mini review is some of the strange changes they made to the enemy behavior and enemy eye, which is, you know, that's subjective. Like, for example, shields are no longer as stable, so you cannot block as much with a shield, and you break your posture more easily with a shield. Armor also can no longer be upgraded, for example, which is a Dark Souls 3 kind of change. Parries are also way harder, but then also enemy AI is much more sophisticated in this. So enemies have much shorter cooldowns to every one of their attacks generally across the board. And they also are more likely to turn around and things when you try and get behind them, so you can't backstab them. The backstab room to backstab is much smaller. Like I said, the parry window timing is much smaller as well. Those I can get those. I can understand why the mod made those changes. But things like armor and things being weaker, and then your damage from weapons being weaker, and then also the mod plays with your... I'm pretty sure this is the mod anyway. It seems to mess with the damage you take when you're falling a little bit, because when you go across the bridge to the Anor Londo archers, for some reason, when you're going downwards on a slope, it seems to think that you're falling, and then you take full damage from it. Which, I'm not sure if that is the mod or if that is something that was in Dark Souls, but I'm pretty sure that is something that the mod's done, personally, because I don't remember that ever being a thing in Dark Souls. But I'll admit I'm wrong if that isn't the case. I think that's pretty much everything. But I think this mod overall is a mixed bag. It advertises itself as being like a Daughters of Ash kind of overhaul mod, which makes loads of different changes to bosses and things, but pretty much across the board, the bosses are exactly the same, except for a couple of key differences, which I think I've already mentioned. Like, you know, the Moonlight Butterfly is one I didn't mention, where it's just more aggressive, and it does attacks a lot faster, which are a lot quicker as well. But, like, Taurus Demon pretty much plays out very similarly. The Gargoyles are the same. You know, Quailag's the same. Unseen Smoke exactly the same. Iron Golem the same. You know, not Ceaseless Discharge. Seath the same. Four Kings is an improvement. Gwendolyn harder. I thought worse personally. That's pretty much it. Really, that's the main notable ones. Really, Bed of Chaos I already said about. So, yeah. Shadow of the Eclipse, I think overall is a mixed bag for me. I did find it very frustrating in some places where things were changed, which just sort of, to me, in my opinion, I think changing things like the parries, and I can understand that, but when you start messing with like the armor and things, and the damage of all the weapons and the enemy AI and things, at that point, when you've changed all the enemy AI, you've changed the weapons, you've changed all the damages, you've changed all the upgrade paths, you've changed boss AI so they're more aggressive with some things, and I don't know, I think you lose some of what makes Dark Souls 1, you know? And I think Daughters of Ash was a good example of keeping Dark Souls 1's integrity intact whilst changing enough to keep the game feeling fresh and different to, yeah, and sort of doing a few things to sort of throw the player off a little bit. Like, for example, Moonlight Butterfly, putting one of those crystal golems on the bridge with a lot of health is enough to keep the challenge the same and keep the boss fight very similar, but spice it up just enough to make you sort of feel a bit, you know, on edge and not quite comfortable. But to be fair, the way this mod handled the Moonlight Butterfly was okay. But anyway, that's my general summary of this mod. I think it's a mixed bag overall. I think there's some good changes, some things that did very well, but then they're oftentimes completely countered by other things the mod's done, just to make things objectively worse, in my opinion, like Demon Ruins. So, if you enjoyed this video, there's a link to the mod down below. If you're interested in what I've said, or the gameplay on the screen has interested you enough to want to check it out yourself, there'll be a link to the mod down in the description, like I said, and I would recommend you check it out yourself, because, you know, people do like this mod. I've seen a lot of people expressing dislike of this mod, but I have also seen a lot of people shouting, you know, singing praise for this mod. So I seem to be on the side of people who don't like it as much, but that doesn't mean I am right, does it? So please feel free to make your own decision and have a discussion in the comments down below what you think of this mod as well. I'm really interested in seeing all that. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Maybe share this video with anyone who enjoyed it if it was good enough. Thank you again for watching. This is Soul Reborn, signing out. Have a good one.